The harsh summer sun beat down on Olivia Vaughan as she stood alone on the dusty train platform, her trunks and valise arranged neatly beside her. Her wedding dress, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, lay in the largest trunk, a symbol of the hope that had brought her 2,000 miles west from Boston. But that hope was fading with each passing hour. It had been 6 hours since the train departed, leaving her at this desolate station in Cottonwood Springs, Arizona Territory, 1885. The man who had advertised for a bride, one Harold Winfield, was nowhere to be found. "Miss, the station's closing soon." The station master's voice carried a note of pity that made Olivia's cheeks burn with humiliation. "Got nowhere to stay for the night." Olivia squared her shoulders, refusing to let her desperation show. At 22, she'd already weathered enough storms to know that tears solved nothing. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Mr. Winfield will arrive shortly." The station master's weathered face told her he'd seen this story before. "Last stage out to town leaves in 20 minutes, miss. There ain't another train till Tuesday." Olivia glanced at her trunks, containing everything she owned in the world. She'd sold her mother's silver to pay for this journey, responding to an advertisement that promised a respectable life with a cattle rancher who needed a wife. The letters they'd exchanged over 6 months had been proper, even cordial. Harold had written of his successful ranch, his 4-bedroom house, and his desire for a family. He'd sent money for her passage without hesitation. And now she stood abandoned, another fool who'd believed in promises from a stranger. The station door swung open, and a tall figure silhouetted against the blazing sunset momentarily captured Olivia's attention. A man in a worn leather vest and dusty cowboy hat strode across the wooden platform, spurs jingling softly with each step. His face, partially shadowed by his hat brim, revealed striking features as he approached, strong jaw covered in several days' stubble, intelligent eyes assessing the nearly empty platform. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew the land and his place in it. When his gaze fell on Olivia, he paused, then continued forward with purpose. "You been waiting long, madam?" he asked, his voice deep and tinged with the drawl of the territory. "I'm waiting for Mr. Harold Winfield," Olivia replied stiffly, unwilling to admit to this stranger that she'd been abandoned. "I'm sure he's just been delayed." The man's expression shifted, something dark passing behind his eyes. "Harold Winfield." He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair. "Madam, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Harold Winfield won't be coming." Olivia felt her stomach drop. "How would you know that, sir?" "Name's Tyler Northcott. I ranch the property neighboring Winfield's." His eyes held hers steadily. "Winfield died 3 weeks ago. Fever took him quick." The blood drained from Olivia's face. Dead. Her future husband was dead, and no one had thought to send word. She was stranded in a territory she knew nothing about, with nowhere to go and precious little money remaining. "I see," she managed, though her voice betrayed her shock. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Northcott." The station master approached, looking uncomfortable. "Station's closing, miss. Last stage leaves in 5 minutes." Olivia stared at her trunks, realizing the impossibility of loading everything onto the stage alone. Her carefully constructed plans were crumbling around her. She would have to pay for lodging, find employment somehow, perhaps scrape together enough for a return ticket. "Miss." Tyler Northcott's voice cut through her racing thoughts. "Yes, Mr. Northcott." He settled his hat back on his head, studying her with thoughtful eyes. "Seems to me you've come a long way for nothing." He glanced at her trunks, then back to her face. A decision seemed to form in his mind. "You've been waiting for me." Olivia blinked in confusion. "I beg your pardon." "Harold was my friend. He spoke of you often." Tyler's expression softened slightly. "Said he was lucky to have found a lady willing to come all this way." He gestured to her luggage. "I've got my wagon outside. I can take you into town, help you get situated." The station master cleared his throat. "Stage is leaving, miss. Now or never." Olivia looked between the departing stage and the cowboy standing before her. In Boston, she'd never trust a stranger so readily. But this wasn't Boston, and she had few options. "Why would you help me, Mr. Northcott?" Because out here we look after our neighbors. Harold would have wanted someone to help you. He reached for one of her trunks. Decision's yours, but I'm offering a ride into town, not a proposal. You need time to figure out your next step. Olivia drew a deep breath. Her mother had always told her to trust her instincts, and something about Tyler Northcott's steady gaze told her he was being honest. Thank you, Mr. Northcott. I accept your kind offer. Tyler nodded, hefting her largest trunk with surprising ease. My wagon's just around the side. Mind grabbing that smaller bag? As the stage rumbled away in a cloud of dust, Olivia followed the cowboy, acutely aware that her fate now rested in the hands of a complete stranger. Yet somehow, in the midst of disaster, a strange calm settled over her. Perhaps it was the shock, or perhaps it was Tyler Northcott's matter-of-fact kindness, but for the first time since stepping off the train, Olivia felt she might survive this misadventure after all. Tyler's wagon was sturdy but weathered, pulled by two strong horses that stood patiently in the fading light. He loaded her trunks efficiently, then offered her a hand up to the wooden seat. Town's about 4 miles east, he explained, climbing up beside her. Hotel's decent enough. Clean beds, fair prices. Mr. Northcott, Olivia began carefully, you said Mr. Winfield died 3 weeks ago. Why wasn't I notified? Tyler clicked to the horses, setting them in motion before answering. Mails slow out here. Harold took sick sudden-like. By the time the doctor got to him, wasn't much anyone could do. He glanced at her. Sheriff probably sent a letter, might still be working its way to Boston, and his ranch, bank'll take it most likely. Harold wasn't as successful as he might have let on. There was no judgment in Tyler's tone, just simple facts. He was a good man, though, just got in over his head trying to make a go of cattle ranching. The landscape sprawling before them was unlike anything Olivia had ever seen, vast expanses of ochre and amber, purple mountains rising in the distance, the setting sun painting everything in gold. Despite her circumstances, she couldn't help but be struck by its wild beauty. It's not what you expected, Tyler observed, noting her gaze. No, Olivia admitted, but it's beautiful in its way. Territory grows on you, harsh but honest. He adjusted the reins. Mind if I ask what brought you all the way from Boston to marry a man you'd never met? Olivia stiffened slightly. My reasons are my own, Mr. Northcott, he nodded, accepting her rebuff without offense. Fair enough. They rode in silence for a while, the rhythmic clopping of hooves and creaking of wagon wheels the only sounds. Olivia's thoughts tumbled over one another as she considered her dire situation. Her teaching position in Boston had ended when the school's headmaster made improper advances that she'd firmly rejected. With her parents gone and no close family, the mail-order advertisement had seemed a chance at a new life where her reputation wasn't tarnished by another's lies. The double N That's My Ranch borders what was Harold's place, Tyler said, breaking the silence. Got about 200 head of cattle, doing all right for myself. Been out here 8 years now. You're a long way from home yourself, Olivia observed, hearing the hints of an Eastern accent beneath his Western drawl. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Pennsylvania originally. Came west after the war, needed open sky. The war. He would have been young, Olivia realized, but old enough to fight. That explained the distant look that occasionally shadowed his eyes. As they crested a small rise, lights twinkled in the distance, the town of Cottonwood Springs emerging from the darkening landscape. Relief flooded through Olivia at the sight of civilization, however modest. That's Johnson's Hotel at the far end of Main Street, Tyler pointed. Mrs. Johnson's a good woman, won't overcharge you. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Northcott, Olivia said sincerely. I'm in your debt. Tyler gave her a sidelong glance. No debt, just neighbors helping neighbors. We're hardly neighbors, sir. I won't be staying. Where will you go? The simple question caught her off guard. Where indeed? She had enough money for perhaps a week's lodging and a train ticket, but to where? Boston held nothing for her now. I'll find my way, she said with more confidence than she felt. Tyler didn't contradict her, but his expression suggested he understood her predicament better than she might wish. As they entered the town's main street, Olivia took in the wooden storefronts. the saloon with its swinging doors, the small church at one end. It was a far cry from Boston's cobblestone streets and brick buildings, but there was a certain rugged charm to its frontier simplicity. The wagon pulled up before a two-story clapboard building with a neat sign reading Johnson's Hotel and Boarding House. Before Tyler could climb down, the door opened and a stout woman with gray streaked hair emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "Tyler Northcott, didn't expect to see you in town this week." The woman's eyes immediately found Olivia. "And who might this be, Mrs. Johnson? This is Miss Olivia Vaughan from Boston," Tyler explained, jumping down from the wagon. She was to marry Harold Winfield. Understanding dawned on the older woman's face. "Oh, you poor dear, no one told you, did they?" She shot Tyler a look. "Well, come inside. We'll get you settled with a room." Tyler was already unloading Olivia's trunks. "Just need to know where to put these, Mrs. Johnson." "Room 6 is free, top of the stairs," the landlady said, then turned her attention back to Olivia, helping her down from the wagon. "Don't you worry about a thing, dear. We'll sort this all out." Olivia found herself ushered into a tidy lobby with worn but clean furnishings. The smell of fresh baked bread and stew filled the air, reminding her she hadn't eaten since morning. "Have you had supper, Mrs. Johnson asked, as if reading her thoughts. "No, madam, I haven't." "Well, we'll fix that right away, just finishing up in the kitchen." She smiled warmly. "You sit down and catch your breath. It's a shock, I know, coming all this way to find out that my intended is dead." Olivia finished for her with a calmness that surprised even herself. "Yes, it's rather unexpected." Mrs. Johnson patted her hand. "You've got spirit that'll serve you well out here." Tyler came in carrying the last of her trunks, setting it down carefully. "That's everything, Miss Vaughan." "Thank you, Mr. Northcott. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." He nodded, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Mrs. Johnson will take good care of you." He hesitated, then added, "I'll be in town tomorrow on business. Could stop by, see if you need anything else." Before Olivia could respond, Mrs. Johnson jumped in. "That's kind of you, Tyler. Why don't you join us for breakfast?" 8 o'clock. A flicker of something reluctance, interest crossed his face. "All right, 8 o'clock." He settled his hat back on his head. "Evening, ladies." With that, he was gone, leaving Olivia to wonder at the strange turn her life had taken in just a few hours. She'd arrived expecting to meet her future husband, and instead found herself dependent on the kindness of strangers in a town she never meant to visit. "He's a good man, Mrs. Johnson said, watching Olivia's gaze follow Tyler out the door. "Keeps to himself mostly, but you couldn't ask for a more decent neighbor in these parts." "I'm grateful for his assistance," Olivia replied carefully. "Come along now. Let's get you some supper, and then we can talk about what comes next." The older woman led her toward the back of the house. "Options are never as few as they seem at first glance, dear. Remember that." Olivia followed, carrying the weight of uncertainty with each step. Whatever came next would have to be faced with the same determination that had brought her west. She was not the first woman to find herself adrift in unexpected circumstances, and she wouldn't be the last. The question was not if she would survive this setback, but how. After a simple but satisfying meal of beef stew and fresh bread, Olivia followed Mrs. Johnson upstairs to room 6. It was modest but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, small dresser, and a window overlooking the main street. "Bathrooms at the end of the hall," Mrs. Johnson explained. "Hot water for bathing on Tuesdays and Saturdays, but there's always a pitcher and basin in your room." "It's lovely," Olivia said sincerely, already calculating how long she could afford to stay. Reading her expression, Mrs. Johnson said, "It's $2 a week, includes breakfast and supper. Or 50 cents a night if you're just passing through." "Thank you, I'll take it for a week to start." Olivia opened her reticule, counting out the money carefully. Mrs. Johnson accepted the payment, then hesitated. "Miss Vaughan, I hope you don't mind my asking, but what are your plans now?" Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's events. "I hardly know, Mrs. Johnson. I need to find employment, I suppose. Are there any teaching positions in town? We've got a school, but Miss Perkins has been teaching our children for 15 years. The landlady's expression was sympathetic. Not much call for educated ladies' skills out here, I'm afraid, though. She paused, thinking. Sheriff Mill's wife runs the dry goods store, might need help now that she's expecting. I'll inquire tomorrow, Olivia said, trying to sound hopeful. There's also the possibility. Mrs. Johnson stopped herself. Well, no sense getting ahead of ourselves. You rest tonight. Things often look clearer in the morning light. After the landlady left, Olivia slowly unpacked her nightgown and toiletries, the simple routine bringing a measure of normalcy to the chaos of her situation. She washed her face and hands in the basin, changed into her nightclothes, and sat by the window, looking out at the unfamiliar town now shrouded in darkness, broken only by the yellow glow of oil lamps from a few windows and the saloon down the street. Boston seemed a lifetime away, its crowded streets, tall buildings, and the constant buzz of city life replaced by this frontier town's stark simplicity and vast, open spaces. She thought of Harold Winfield, a man she'd never met but with whom she'd planned to spend her life. There was sorrow at his passing, but it was abstract, mourning the idea of him rather than the man himself. And then there was Tyler Northcott, the unexpected cowboy who'd arrived at precisely the moment she needed help. His kindness had been straightforward, without expectation of reward or gratitude. She'd met few men like that in Boston, where social interaction was governed by intricate rules and hidden agendas. Sleep came fitfully that night, Olivia's dreams filled with endless train journeys to nowhere and a shadowy figure always just out of reach. She woke with the first light, feeling oddly refreshed despite her troubled sleep. The sounds of a town coming to life drifted through her window, wagons creaking, merchants setting up their wares, the distant lowing of cattle being driven through the streets. After dressing in one of her simpler dresses, a blue cotton with white trim that wouldn't draw undue attention, Olivia made her way downstairs. The dining room was empty save for an elderly gentleman reading a newspaper in the corner. Mrs. Johnson appeared from the kitchen, carrying a pot of coffee. "Good morning, dear. Sleep well." She poured Olivia a cup without waiting for a reply. "Breakfast will be ready shortly, just biscuits and eggs this morning if that suits." "That sounds wonderful, thank you. Tyler should be along soon. He's usually prompt, Mrs. Johnson bustled back toward the kitchen, leaving Olivia to wonder why the thought of seeing the cowboy again brought a flutter of nervousness to her stomach. True to Mrs. Johnson's prediction, at precisely 8 o'clock, the hotel door opened and Tyler Northcott stepped inside. He'd cleaned up since yesterday, his face freshly shaved, his clothes less dusty. Without his hat, she could see his hair was a rich brown with a slight wave to it. He nodded to the old man in the corner before his eyes found Olivia. "Miss Vaughan," he greeted, crossing to her table. "Hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected, thank you." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, join me." He sat down, his large frame making the dining chair seem smaller than it was. Up close, Olivia could see that his eyes were a striking shade of green, flecked with gold, unusual and compelling. "Mrs. Johnson mentioned you might be looking for work," he said without preamble. Olivia was surprised at his directness. "Yes, I need to support myself while I decide what comes next." "Thought you might." He accepted a cup of coffee from Mrs. Johnson, who had reappeared with remarkable timing. "I spoke with Claire Mills at the dry goods store this morning. She could use help 3 days a week. You spoke to her on my behalf." Olivia wasn't sure whether to be grateful or offended at his presumption. Just mentioned there was a lady from back east looking for work. Didn't promise anything. He sipped his coffee. "She said to come by if you're interested." Mrs. Johnson arrived with plates of eggs, biscuits, and bacon. "Tyler's just being neighborly, dear. That's how things work out here, word of mouth, people helping people." Olivia realized she'd been judging the situation by Boston standards, where such intervention would have been considered inappropriate meddling. "Of course. Thank you, Mr. Northcott. I'll visit Mrs. Mills today." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. The food was simple but well prepared, and Olivia found she was ravenously hungry after the previous day's upheaval. "What did you teach back in Boston?" Tyler asked eventually. Literature and composition, primarily. I also gave piano lessons to supplement my income. She dabbed at her lips with a napkin. I taught at the Hathaway School for Young Ladies. Tyler nodded, seeming genuinely interested. Education's important. We've got a small school here, but nothing fancy. Mrs. Johnson mentioned it. The position is filled, unfortunately. For now, he pushed his empty plate aside. Things change quick out here. Might be worth letting Miss Perkins know you're available in case she needs help. The conversation turned to the town itself, with Tyler explaining its history and current status. Founded originally as a trading post in the 1850s, Cottonwood Springs had grown into a modest but stable community serving the surrounding ranches and farms. The arrival of the railroad 5 years earlier had brought new prosperity, connecting the isolated town to markets in the east. Sheriff keeps order well enough, Tyler explained. Town council meets once a month to handle disputes and planning. Church on Sundays, social every third Saturday at the town hall. He smiled slightly at Olivia's surprised expression. We're not completely uncivilized, Miss Vaughan. I never suggested you were, she replied, matching his slight smile with one of her own. Though I admit I expected something. Wilder? Oh, you can find trouble if you're looking for it. Saloon gets rowdy on payday, occasional dispute over water rights or cattle, but mostly folks just want to live in peace, same as anywhere. As they finished breakfast, Tyler seemed reluctant to leave, though Olivia could tell he had business to attend to. Finally, he pushed back from the table and stood. I should get moving. Got supplies to pick up, then heading back to the ranch. He hesitated. I'll be in town again next Wednesday for the cattle auction. Could check how you're settling in if you'd like. Olivia was touched by his continued concern. That would be kind of you, Mr. Northcott. He reached for his hat, which hung on a peg by the door. Tyler. Most folks just call me Tyler. Then I'm Olivia, she offered in return. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Olivia, he nodded once. Good luck with Mrs. Mills. After he left, Mrs. Johnson appeared beside Olivia with a knowing look. He doesn't usually take breakfast here, you know. Not unless he's forced to stay overnight in town. I'm sure he was just being polite, Olivia replied, uncomfortable with the landlady's insinuation. Of course, dear. Mrs. Johnson began clearing the dishes. The Mills store is just 3 doors down on the right. Light blue storefront, can't miss it. Claire's a lovely woman, you'll like her. An hour later, Olivia found herself standing before Claire Mills, a petite, dark-haired woman whose advanced pregnancy was evident beneath her loose dress. The dry goods store was well stocked and organized, offering everything from fabric and notions to preserved foods and household items. So you're the Boston lady Tyler mentioned, Claire said, appraising Olivia with friendly curiosity. He said you were educated and needed work. Yes, Mrs. Mills. I find myself unexpectedly stranded in your town, and I need to support myself while I determine my next steps. Claire rested a hand on her swollen belly. Well, as you can see, I could use the help. Baby's due in 6 weeks, and even now I'm finding it hard to manage alone when my husband's busy with sheriff duties. She glanced around the store. Can you handle simple bookkeeping, make change, write legibly for orders? Yes to all 3, Olivia assured her. I'm a quick learner and not afraid of hard work. 3 days a week to start Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 until 5 with an hour for lunch, $2 a day. Claire named the terms confidently. If it works out, might become more permanent after the baby comes. The pay was less than Olivia had earned teaching, but it would cover her room and board with a little left over. I accept, Mrs. Mills. When would you like me to start? How about today? Friday's usually busy. Claire smiled warmly. And call me Claire, please. We don't stand on ceremony much out here. That afternoon passed in a flurry of activity as Olivia learned the layout of the store, the pricing of common items, and the system Claire used for ordering and inventory. The customers, mostly ranchers' wives and townsfolk, regarded the newcomer with undisguised curiosity, but were generally friendly once Claire explained Olivia's situation. By the end of the day, Olivia's feet ached and her head swam with new information, but she felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't teaching literature, but it was honest work that would keep her fed and housed while she planned her future. "You did well today," Claire told her as they closed up the shop. "You've got a good head for figures." "Thank you for the opportunity," Olivia replied sincerely. "It means more than you know," Claire studied her thoughtfully. "Tyler seemed concerned about you. That's not like him. He usually keeps to himself." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "He's been very kind, helping a stranger." "Tyler's a good man," Claire said, echoing Mrs. Johnson's assessment. "Lost his wife and baby during childbirth about 5 years back. Keeps to his ranch mostly, doesn't socialize much." She patted Olivia's arm. "Just thought you should know." The revelation about Tyler's past added a new dimension to Olivia's understanding of the quiet cowboy. His solitary nature made more sense now, and she felt a pang of sympathy for the loss he'd endured. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said softly. Claire nodded. "Life's hard out here sometimes, but we endure." She locked the store's front door. "See you Monday, Olivia. Have a restful weekend." Walking back to the hotel in the golden light of late afternoon, Olivia felt both exhausted and energized. In just 2 days, her life had been completely upended, yet somehow she was adapting. The town was beginning to feel less alien, the faces less strange. She'd secured employment and lodging temporary solutions, but solutions nonetheless. And there was Tyler Northcott, a man whose quiet strength and unexpected kindness had been a lifeline when she needed it most. The knowledge of his tragic past added layers to her perception of him. His solitude wasn't just preference but protective armor around a wounded heart. As she reached the hotel, Olivia realized with sudden clarity that despite everything, despite the abandonment and shock and uncertainty, she wasn't ready to leave Cottonwood Springs just yet. Something or someone was giving her reason to stay at least a little longer. The weekend passed quietly. Olivia attended church on Sunday, where she was introduced to more townspeople, including the schoolteacher, Miss Perkins, who seemed genuinely interested in Olivia's teaching experience. "Always good to have educated folks in town," the older woman had said. "Perhaps we could discuss literature sometime. Gets lonesome being the only one who reads anything beyond the newspaper." By the time Monday arrived, Olivia had established a small routine. Breakfast at the hotel, work at the store, walks around town in the evenings to familiarize herself with her temporary home. Claire proved to be not just an employer but a friend, sharing stories about the town and its inhabitants during quiet periods in the store. Tyler Northcott wasn't always so reserved, Claire told her on Wednesday morning as they arranged a new shipment of fabrics. Before Sarah died, he was more sociable. They'd come to town dances, host barbecues at their ranch, she sighed. "Grief changes people." "It does," Olivia agreed, thinking of her own parents passing 3 years earlier. "But sometimes the changes aren't permanent." "True enough," Claire conceded, then glanced out the window. "Speaking of Mr. Northcott." Olivia followed her gaze to see Tyler riding past on a handsome chestnut gelding. He spotted them through the window and tipped his hat, a gesture that for some reason made Olivia's heart beat a little faster. "Cattle auctions at noon," Claire said with a barely concealed smile. "He'll probably stop by after." "Mrs. Mills," Olivia began, trying to sound nonchalant, "I don't want you to get the wrong impression. Mr. Northcott has simply been kind to a stranger in unfortunate circumstances." Claire's eyes twinkled. "Of course, and I'm sure that's all there is to it." Olivia busied herself with the fabrics, unwilling to examine the flutter of anticipation she felt at the prospect of seeing Tyler again. It was natural to feel drawn to someone who'd shown kindness during a difficult time, she reasoned. Nothing more. The morning passed with steady business, and just after 1 o'clock the store door opened to admit Tyler, still dusty from the auction yards. "Ladies," he greeted them, removing his hat. His eyes lingered on Olivia a moment longer than necessary. "Busy day, steady enough," Claire replied. "How was the auction?" "Got fair prices, markets holding strong." He shifted his weight, seeming slightly uncomfortable. "Miss Vaughan, Olivia, I was wondering if you might join me for lunch, if Mrs. Mills can spare you." Claire waved a hand dismissively. "Go on, it's slow now anyway." "Take your hour." Olivia hesitated only briefly. Thank you, let me get my shawl. Outside, the September sun warmed the boardwalk as they walked toward the small cafe at the end of the street. Tyler was quieter than usual, and Olivia found herself filling the silence with questions about the cattle auction and his ranch. 200 acres, he explained as they settled at a table in the cafe. Runs alongside a creek, good grazing land. House isn't fancy, but it's solid. Built it myself. That's impressive, Olivia said sincerely. In Boston, few people build their own homes. Out here, you learn to be self-sufficient or you don't survive. He studied her face. You're adapting well. Claire says you're a quick study. It's different work than I'm used to, but not unpleasant. Olivia smoothed her napkin in her lap. Everyone has been very kind. Good people here mostly. He ordered for both of them when the waitress approached beef stew and cornbread, a simple but hearty meal. Been thinking about your situation. Oh. Olivia wasn't sure whether to be touched or concerned by his continued interest in her welfare. Harold's place is going to auction next month. Banks taking sealed bids. He hesitated. Thing is, even though you never married him, you might have some claim. You came all this way on his invitation with his money. Olivia stared at him, shocked. I couldn't possibly make such a claim. We weren't married. I have no legal standing. Maybe not in a regular court, but out here, things work differently sometimes. Judge Patterson's fair-minded. Might consider the circumstances. Tyler leaned forward slightly. Even if you only got a small settlement, it could help you get back on your feet or back east if that's what you want. The idea was startling. She'd never considered that Harold's estate might owe her anything. I don't know, Mr. Northcott. Tyler, he corrected gently. Tyler, it seems like taking advantage. It's not. Harold made a commitment to you. Circumstances prevented him from honoring it, but that doesn't erase the obligation. His green eyes held hers, just something to consider. Their food arrived, momentarily diverting the conversation. As they ate, Olivia found herself studying Tyler more closely. He was handsome in a weathered, frontier way, strong features, tanned skin from long days outdoors, capable hands that spoke of hard work. But it was his eyes that captivated her, intelligent and observant, with depths of experience that belied his relatively young age. Tell me about Boston, he said suddenly. What's it like living in a big city? Olivia described her life there, the bustling streets, the cultural events, the changing seasons along the Charles River. It has its own beauty, she concluded. Different from here, but no less real. Why did you leave? The question was direct, but his tone remained gentle. Must have had good reasons to travel so far to marry a stranger. Olivia hesitated. She'd kept her reasons private, but something about Tyler invited confidence. My position at the school became untenable. The headmaster made improper advances, which I rejected. When I complained to the board, they sided with him. She looked down at her plate. My reputation suffered. Teaching positions require recommendations, which I no longer had. Tyler's expression darkened. Man abuses his position, and you're the one who suffers for it. World's not fair sometimes. No, it isn't, Olivia agreed, but we make do with the hand we're dealt. That we do. Something in his voice made her look up, finding his gaze on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're stronger than you look, Olivia Vaughan. The simple compliment warmed her more than it should have. As are you, Tyler Northcott. They finished their meal in companionable conversation, touching on books they'd read, places they'd seen, and the differences between Eastern and Western life. Tyler was more educated than his cowboy appearance suggested, and Olivia found herself genuinely enjoying his company. As they walked back to the store, Tyler said, I won't be in town again for a couple weeks. Got fencing to repair on the north section, then cattle to move to winter pastures. Olivia was surprised by the disappointment she felt. I understand, ranch work must keep you very busy. It does. He stopped outside the dry goods store, but I'd like to call on you when I return if that would be acceptable. The formal request, so at odds with the casual frontier manner, made Olivia smile. Yes, that would be acceptable. I'd like that. A rare, full smile transformed Tyler's face, softening the hard lines and bringing a warmth to his eyes. Good, that's good. He settled his hat back on his head. Take care, Olivia. And you, Tyler. Watching him walk away, Olivia realized with a start that she was looking forward to his return more than she should. It was foolish to develop any attachment to this place or its people when her situation remained so uncertain. Yet as she returned to work, she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something important had just begun. The next 2 weeks passed in steady routine. Olivia's work at the store proved satisfying, her friendship with Claire deepening as they worked side by side. The pregnant woman shared stories of her own arrival in Cottonwood Springs 5 years earlier, a schoolteacher from Illinois who'd fallen in love with the young deputy sheriff during her first term. Wasn't planning to stay either, Claire confided, but sometimes life has other plans. Olivia also became better acquainted with other townspeople. Mrs. Johnson introduced her to the ladies' sewing circle, where conversation flowed as freely as tea. Miss Perkins invited her to visit the schoolhouse, where Olivia delighted in the familiar chalk dust and rows of books. 28 students ages 6 to 16, Miss Perkins explained. More than I can properly manage alone, especially with the older ones needing advanced instruction. It must be challenging, Olivia sympathized, running her fingers along the spines of the well-worn readers. Indeed. I've been considering asking the town council for an assistant. Miss Perkins gave her a pointed look. Someone with proper teaching credentials and experience with literature. The hint was clear, and Olivia felt a spark of hope. Teaching again, doing what she loved, would be a blessing she hadn't dared hope for. Throughout these days, Olivia found her thoughts returning to Tyler more often than she cared to admit. She wondered about his ranch, his daily life, whether he was managing alone with all the work that needed doing. Claire occasionally mentioned news of him. He'd purchased several head of cattle at the auction. His winter wheat crop was doing well, tidbits gleaned from her husband's interactions with ranchers in the area. Tyler's well-respected, Sheriff Mills told Olivia one evening when he stopped by the hotel to escort Claire home. Fair in his dealings, helps neighbors when they're in trouble, not the kind to shoot first and ask questions later like some out here. On the Sunday of the second week, Olivia attended church as usual, then accepted an invitation to Sunday dinner with Claire and Sheriff Mills. Their small house behind the jail was cozy and well-kept, with curtains Claire had sewn herself and a small parlor piano that delighted Olivia. "Do you play?" she asked the sheriff, noting the sheet music on the stand. "Not a note," he admitted with a laugh. "Claire's the musician. I just enjoy listening." Olivia was a piano teacher in Boston, Claire mentioned, arranging serving dishes on the table. "Perhaps she'd play for us after dinner." The familiar feel of the keys beneath her fingers brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes as she played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Music had been her solace during difficult times, and playing now in this frontier town so far from everything familiar felt like reconnecting with an essential part of herself. When she finished, the silence in the room was broken only by Claire's soft, "That was beautiful." "Truly," the sheriff agreed. "Been a while since we've had such fine music in town. Shame more folks couldn't hear it." Claire's eyes lit up. "The Harvest Social is next Saturday. The town hall has that old upright that no one plays properly. Olivia, would you consider performing?" The idea was both appealing and nerve-wracking. "I wouldn't want to impose." "Nonsense," Sheriff Mills declared. "People would love it. Something different from the usual fiddle and banjo, not that there's anything wrong with a good fiddle," he added hastily. Olivia found herself agreeing, partly from genuine interest and partly because it gave her something to look forward to besides Tyler's eventual return. She needed to remember that her stay in Cottonwood Springs was temporary, a waypoint rather than a destination. Yet as she walked back to the hotel that evening, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold, Olivia couldn't help but feel a growing attachment to this place and its people. The openness of the landscape seemed to mirror a similar openness in her heart space for new possibilities she hadn't considered before. Wednesday of the third week brought unexpected excitement to the dry goods store. Claire, arranging bolts of calico, suddenly gasped and clutched her abdomen. "Claire," Olivia was at her side instantly. "What is it?" The baby, Claire managed, her face pale. "It's too early, but I think it's coming." Olivia helped her to a chair, then hurried to the door. "I'll fetch the doctor and your husband, Mrs. Peterson first," Claire directed, naming the town midwife. "2 doors down from the church, then John." Olivia ran, her heart pounding with fear for her friend. Mrs. Peterson, a sturdy woman with graying hair, responded immediately, grabbing her midwife's bag and following Olivia back to the store. Sheriff Mills arrived moments later, his face tight with concern. "She's having contractions," Mrs. Peterson announced after a brief examination. "Need to get her home and comfortable. Baby's coming, no stopping it now." What followed was a flurry of activity as the store was closed. Claire was carefully transported home, and the doctor was summoned. Olivia found herself pressed into service as assistant to Mrs. Peterson, boiling water, preparing clean linens, and offering comfort to Claire during the increasingly painful contractions. "First babies often come early," Mrs. Peterson reassured them. "She's strong and the baby feels positioned right." Hours passed in a blur of activity and tension. Sheriff Mills paced outside the bedroom, occasionally peeking in for updates. By sunset, Claire's labor had intensified, her cries of pain piercing Olivia's heart. "You're doing wonderfully," Olivia murmured, wiping Claire's forehead with a cool cloth. "Almost there." "Tell John I love him," Claire gasped between contractions. "Just in case none of that talk," Mrs. Peterson interrupted firmly. "You'll tell him yourself when you're holding your baby." Near midnight, with a final, tremendous effort, Claire delivered a small but robust baby boy. His first cry filled the room, bringing tears to Olivia's eyes and a sob of relief from Claire. "A son," Mrs. Peterson announced, cleaning and wrapping the infant. "Bit small, but strong lungs, he'll do fine." When Sheriff Mills was allowed in to see his wife and son, his weathered face transformed with joy and awe. "He's perfect," he whispered, one finger gently touching the baby's cheek, "just like his mother." Exhausted but deeply moved by the experience, Olivia slipped out to give the new family privacy. Mrs. Peterson followed, packing her supplies. "You did well in there," the midwife told her. "Got steady hands and a calm manner, both needed for birthing." "Thank you, but I was terrified the entire time," Olivia admitted. "Fear's natural, pushing through it is what counts." Mrs. Peterson patted her arm. "Claire's lucky to have you as a friend." The word resonated with Olivia as she walked back to the hotel in the deep quiet of the late-night hour. In just 3 weeks, she'd found friendship in this unexpected place. Claire, Mrs. Johnson, Miss Perkins, even Mrs. Peterson now. Connections she hadn't been looking for, but that had formed nonetheless. And Tyler. Whatever was developing between them wasn't exactly friendship, but it wasn't exactly courtship either. It existed in some undefined space of mutual respect and growing affection that Olivia wasn't quite ready to name. The following day, Olivia kept the store open, handling customers and explaining Claire's happy news to the steady stream of well-wishers. She was arranging the day's receipts when the door opened, bringing with it a gust of autumn air and Tyler Northcott. Her heart leapt at the sight of him, tan Stetson pushed back on his head, the same worn leather vest over a clean blue shirt, his expression brightening as his eyes found her behind the counter. "Heard the news about the Mills baby," he said by way of greeting. "Everyone doing all right?" "Yes, mother and son are both well," Olivia confirmed, trying to control the smile that threatened to overtake her face. "A bit early, but Mrs. Peterson says he's strong." Tyler nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Good, that's good." He glanced around the empty store. "Guess you're handling things alone for a while." "Yes, though Claire's mother arrives from Denver tomorrow to help." Olivia finished organizing the receipts, acutely aware of Tyler's presence. "How is your fencing project?" "Finished, for now." He took a step closer to the counter. "Thought about you while I was working." The simple admission made Olivia's cheeks warm. "Did you?" Wondered how you were settling in, if you decided what comes next. His green eyes searched her face. "If you were still planning to leave." Olivia hesitated. "I'm not certain anymore." "Miss Perkins has hinted at a possible teaching position, assisting her at the school, and I've made friends here." A smile tugged at the corner of Tyler's mouth. Cottonwood Springs grows on people, so it seems. She met his gaze steadily. I heard about Judge Patterson potentially considering my situation regarding Mr. Winfield's estate. Sheriff Mills mentioned it. Yes, he thinks there might be merit to the idea. Olivia straightened a display of buttons, though I'm still uncomfortable with it. Property goes to auction in 3 weeks. Might be worth at least speaking to the judge before then. Tyler removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. I came to ask if you'd join me for supper tonight, to discuss it if you'd like. The invitation was both expected and surprising. I'd be pleased to accept, though I should warn you that the entire town will be talking by morning. Tyler's laugh was unexpected and warm. They're probably already talking. Small towns run on gossip like engines run on coal. His expression grew more serious. Does that bother you, did it? Olivia considered the question honestly. In Boston, such talk would have concerned her greatly. But here, in this place where she'd found such unexpected kindness, it seemed less important. No, she decided. It doesn't bother me. Good, I'll come by the hotel at 6. He settled his hat back on his head. Looking forward to it, Olivia. After he left, Olivia found herself moving through the remainder of her tasks in a pleasant haze of anticipation. It had been years since she'd felt this particular flutter of excitement about spending time with a man, not since Robert Preston had courted her briefly before the war claimed him at Gettysburg. Back at the hotel, she carefully selected her best dress, a deep burgundy with black piping that complemented her auburn hair. Mrs. Johnson helped her with the buttons, her knowing smile suggesting she approved of the evening's plans. Tyler Northcott cleaning up and coming to town for supper 2 weeks in a row, that's more socializing than he's done in years, the landlady remarked. You've made quite an impression. We're just discussing business, Olivia protested weakly. Mrs. Johnson raised an eyebrow. Of course you are, dear. At precisely 6 o'clock, Tyler arrived, and Olivia's breath caught at the sight of him. He'd clearly made an effort, his hair neatly combed, wearing a crisp white shirt under a dark waistcoat and string tie. He still wore his usual denims and boots, but they were clean and polished. You look lovely, he said simply when she appeared. As do you, she replied, accepting his offered arm. They walked to the hotel restaurant, which was more formal than the cafe and offered proper linen tablecloths and silver place settings. Several heads turned as they entered, confirming Olivia's prediction about town gossip. Over a dinner of roast beef and potatoes, their conversation flowed easily, touching on Claire's baby, the upcoming harvest social, and the changing autumn landscape. It wasn't until dessert apple pie with cream that Tyler broached the subject of Harold Winfield's estate. Spoke with Judge Patterson yesterday, he said, setting down his fork. He's interested in hearing your case, said there's precedent for promised brides having some claim, especially when travel and arrangements were paid for by the deceased. Olivia considered this information thoughtfully. What might such a claim amount to? I don't wish to appear greedy, hard to say. Depends on the value of the estate and what debts Harold left behind. Tyler's expression was serious. Could be a small cash settlement or perhaps a portion of the property itself. The idea of owning Western land was startling. What would I do with property out here? Sell it, lease it, work it. Tyler shrugged. Options depend on what you want for your future. What did she want? The question had occupied Olivia's thoughts increasingly over the past weeks. Boston no longer called to her as it once had. The prospect of teaching again in Cottonwood Springs was appealing. And then there was Tyler, this steady, thoughtful man whose presence in her life had become increasingly important. I thought I knew what I wanted when I left Boston, she admitted. A fresh start, security, perhaps eventually contentment in a practical marriage. She met his gaze. Now I'm not so certain. Because of what happened with Harold, partly, but also because she hesitated, then continued with careful honesty, because I've found unexpected connections here. Possibilities I hadn't considered. Tyler's expression softened. Olivia, I need to be direct about something, her heart quickened. Yes, I've enjoyed your company these past weeks, more than I thought possible. He leaned forward slightly. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah died. Didn't think I could. The admission, simple yet profound, hung between them. Olivia felt a curious mixture of joy and uncertainty. I've enjoyed your company as well, Tyler, very much. I'm not asking for promises, he continued. Just time to see where this might lead. His hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers but close enough that she could feel its warmth. Would that be acceptable to you? Olivia looked at his weathered hand, then into his earnest green eyes. Yes, she said softly. That would be very acceptable. The relief and pleasure that crossed his face made her heart swell. This wasn't a declaration of love, they were both too cautious, too marked by past experiences for that, but it was an acknowledgement of possibility, of a door opening rather than closing. As Tyler escorted her back to the hotel later, their conversation turned to lighter topics: the harvest social, his plans for winter wheat planting, her offer to help Claire with the baby when needed. Standing before the hotel entrance, Olivia found herself reluctant for the evening to end. The social is Saturday, she mentioned. Claire convinced me to play the piano for part of the evening. I'm looking forward to hearing you play, Tyler said. Haven't been to a social in a long while, but I'll be there. The promise warmed her. Good night, Tyler. Good night, Olivia. He hesitated, then leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. Sleep well. The simple gesture left her flushed and smiling as she climbed the stairs to her room. Outside her window, the stars blazed in the clear western sky, more numerous and brilliant than she'd ever seen in Boston. Like possibilities, she thought. Endless and bright, the next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. With Claire at home with the baby, Olivia managed the store alone, assisted occasionally by Mrs. Peterson when the midwife wasn't attending to other patients. She visited Claire each evening, marveling at how naturally her friend had taken to motherhood. John and I are naming him William Tyler Mills, Claire told her, the infant nursing contentedly at her breast, after John's father and Tyler Northcott. Tyler saved John's life 2 years ago during that bank robbery attempt. We've always said we'd honor him if we had a son. The revelation added another dimension to Olivia's growing understanding of Tyler, his quiet heroism matching his quiet strength. Saturday evening arrived with a sense of anticipation throughout the town. The Harvest Social was one of the community's major events, celebrating the bounty of the season before the harsh winter months. The town hall was decorated with autumn leaves, corn husks, and lanterns, creating a warm, festive atmosphere. Olivia wore her burgundy dress again, with a cameo brooch at her throat that had belonged to her mother. Mrs. Johnson helped arrange her hair, pinning the auburn waves into an elegant updo adorned with a simple ribbon. You'll be the belle of the social, the landlady declared with satisfaction. And if Tyler Northcott doesn't think so, he's a bigger fool than I took him for. The town hall was already filling with people when Olivia arrived. Families with children, young couples, elderly residents, it seemed the entire community had turned out for the celebration. A long table held an impressive array of food: roasted meats, vegetables from autumn gardens, fresh baked breads, and pies of every description. Olivia scanned the crowd, her heart skipping when she spotted Tyler near the entrance. He was speaking with Sheriff Mills, who proudly held baby William. When Tyler glanced up and saw her, his conversation faltered, his eyes lingering on her appearance with undisguised appreciation. He excused himself and made his way to her side. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. She took in his appearance: dark suit, crisp white shirt, hair neatly combed beneath his best hat. You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Northcott. His smile was warm, for special occasions. The evening progressed with food, conversation, and dancing to the lively tunes of a 3-piece band: fiddle, banjo, and guitar. Tyler proved to be a surprisingly graceful dancer, guiding Olivia through a Virginia reel and a waltz with confident steps. Where did a rancher learn to dance so well? She asked as they circled the floor. My mother insisted all her sons learn proper manners, even on the Pennsylvania frontier, he replied. Said we might be farmers, but we wouldn't be uncultured. A wise woman, she was, His hand tightened slightly at her waist. She would have liked you. The simple statement, carrying implications of a deeper connection, made Olivia's heart flutter. Before she could respond, the music ended, and Mayor Thompson called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat tonight. Our newest resident, Miss Olivia Vaughan from Boston, has kindly agreed to favor us with some piano music." Miss Vaughan, applause greeted her as she made her way to the upright piano in the corner. The instrument was out of tune and showed signs of hard use, but as Olivia settled onto the bench and positioned her fingers on the keys, she felt a sense of rightness wash over her. She began with a spirited rendition of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, knowing the patriotic tune would be familiar to most. The crowd responded enthusiastically, some joining in with the chorus. Encouraged, she continued with Beautiful Dreamer and Lorna, the sweet, melancholy tunes bringing a hush to the room. For her final piece, she chose Chopin's Waltz in a minor, her fingers dancing across the keys with practiced precision despite the piano's limitations. When the last note faded, there was a moment of awed silence before the applause erupted, louder than before. "Didn't know that old piano could sound like that," Mayor Thompson declared, helping Olivia from the bench. "You've brought a touch of culture to our little celebration, Miss Vaughan." As she made her way back through the crowd, accepting compliments and thanks, Olivia found Tyler waiting near the refreshment table, his expression a mixture of admiration and something deeper, more personal. "That was." He began, then shook his head. "I don't have the words for it, Olivia." "Beautiful doesn't seem enough," she smiled, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Made me think of what the ranch house has been missing." He handed her a cup of punch. "Music, life." The implication wasn't lost on her, but before she could respond, they were joined by Miss Perkins, who was effusive in her praise of Olivia's performance. "You simply must help me with the Christmas pageant," the teacher insisted. "The children would benefit enormously from proper musical instruction." She lowered her voice. "I've spoken with the school board about an assistant position. They're receptive, especially after Sheriff Mills spoke on your behalf." The news was unexpected and welcome. "That's very kind of you, Miss Perkins. I'd be delighted to help with the pageant regardless." As the evening continued, Olivia found herself at the center of the community in a way she hadn't experienced before. People sought her out for conversation, young girls asked about Boston fashions, mothers inquired if she might give piano lessons to their children. It was a heady feeling, this sense of belonging, of having skills and knowledge that were valued. Through it all, Tyler remained nearby, not hovering but present, his steady gaze finding hers across the room at intervals. When the band resumed playing and he asked for another dance, Olivia went willingly into his arms, more comfortable now with his touch, with the way they moved together. "You've made quite an impression tonight," he observed as they waltzed. "Miss Perkins isn't the only one who'd like you to stay in Cottonwood Springs." The statement invited a response Olivia wasn't quite ready to give. Instead, she asked, "Will you be at the auction for Harold's property?" "Planning to. Got my eye on the east pasture that borders my land." He studied her face. "You should talk to Judge Patterson soon if you're going to." "I've decided to," she told him. "Not out of greed, but because it feels right to resolve matters properly before moving forward with whatever comes next." Tyler nodded approvingly. Wise decision. The dance ended, and Olivia realized how late the hour had grown. "I should return to the hotel soon. It's been a long day." "I'll walk you back," Tyler offered immediately. Outside, the October night was crisp, stars brilliant in the clear sky. Tyler offered Olivia his arm, and they walked in companionable silence for a moment, the sounds of the social fading behind them. "Been thinking about what you said the other night," Tyler said finally, "about not being certain what you want anymore." "Yes, seems to me uncertainty isn't always a bad thing, means you're open to possibilities you hadn't considered before." He glanced down at her. "Like staying in a place you never meant to visit," Olivia smiled. "Or finding connection with someone you never expected to meet." They stopped before the hotel, the lamplight from inside casting a warm glow on the boardwalk. Tyler turned to face her, his expression serious yet tender. Olivia, I'm not a man given to flowery speech or grand gestures, but I want you to know that meeting you has been significant for me. He took her hand gently in his. Whatever you decide about your future, I hope there might be room in it for us to explore what's growing between us. The sincerity in his voice, the careful hope in his eyes, touched Olivia deeply. Tyler, when I came west, I was running from something, not toward anything. I thought practical considerations were enough: security, stability, a fresh start. She squeezed his hand. I never expected to find someone who would make me feel this way. And how is that? He asked softly, like possibilities are more important than certainties, like the unexpected might be better than the planned. She smiled up at him. Like I might have found something worth staying for. The hope in his eyes brightened. Does that mean? It means I'm seriously considering Miss Perkins' offer, and I'm very interested in seeing where this, she gestured between them, might lead. Tyler's smile transformed his face, making him look younger, unburdened. That's good enough for me for now. Gently, he raised her hand to his lips, placing a kiss on her knuckles. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Tyler. As she watched him walk away, Olivia felt a certainty settling in her heart that had nothing to do with practical considerations or careful plans. It was the certainty of having found something genuine and precious, something worth taking a chance on. The following Tuesday, Olivia met with Judge Patterson in his office above the bank. The judge, a dignified man in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, listened attentively as she explained her situation. Unusual circumstances, to be sure, he said when she'd finished, but not without precedent. The territory recognizes breach of promise cases, and while death isn't breach in the usual sense, the principle applies. I don't wish to take advantage, Olivia emphasized. Mr. Winfield paid for my passage and made certain promises. That's all I'm concerned with. Judge Patterson nodded approvingly. A reasonable position. I'll review the estate particulars, but preliminary assessment suggests the property will sell for enough to cover debts with something left over. He made a note in his ledger. A 10% share seems appropriate given the circumstances. Would that be acceptable to you, Miss Vaughan? The amount was more generous than Olivia had anticipated. Yes, Your Honor, more than acceptable. Very well, I'll draft the necessary documents. He peered at her over his spectacles. I understand you're considering staying in Cottonwood Springs. Yes, sir. Miss Perkins has spoken to the school board about an assistant teaching position. Excellent news. We need more educated folks in these parts. He closed his ledger. And I hear you've been spending time with Tyler Northcott. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. News travels quickly in small towns. Judge Patterson smiled. That it does. Tyler's a good man, been through his share of hardship but never let it embitter him. His expression grew more serious. This territory needs good people who are willing to build something lasting, Miss Vaughan, people with both education and character. I'm beginning to understand that, Your Honor. As she left the judge's office, Olivia felt another piece of her future falling into place. The settlement would provide a financial cushion while she established herself in the community, whether as a teacher, a piano instructor, or perhaps something else entirely. The next 2 weeks passed in steady routine. Olivia continued managing the store while Claire recovered, visited the schoolhouse to observe Miss Perkins' teaching methods, and gave her first piano lesson to Mayor Thompson's 10-year-old daughter. Tyler was busy with ranch work, but rode into town twice, each time taking Olivia to dinner and walking her back to the hotel afterward. Their relationship progressed with careful, deliberate steps, conversation deepening, shared interests emerging, hands occasionally brushing with growing familiarity. Tyler spoke more openly about Sarah and the grief that had isolated him for years. Olivia shared stories of her parents, her teaching career, and the humiliation that had driven her west. We're both starting over, in a way, Tyler observed during one of their walks. Past doesn't go away, but it doesn't have to define everything that comes after. The wisdom in his words resonated with Olivia. She was, indeed, starting over, not in the way she'd planned, but perhaps in a better way than she could have imagined. On the morning of the property auction, Olivia received word from Judge Patterson that her claim had been officially recognized. 10% of the proceeds would be held for her, to be distributed after all transactions were complete. The auction itself was held at the courthouse, with a dozen potential buyers attending. Olivia watched with interest as parcels of Harold Winfield's property were sold off grazing land to neighboring ranchers, the small house and barn to a young couple recently arrived from Kansas, farm equipment to various bidders. Tyler successfully purchased the 80 acres that bordered his property, paying a fair price that brought nods of approval from other ranchers. When the auction concluded, he sought Olivia out, looking pleased with the outcome. Got the land I wanted, good water access, decent grazing. He hesitated, then added, "There's something I'd like to show you if you have time this afternoon." Intrigued, Olivia agreed. "The store closes at 4, I could be ready by 4:30. "I'll bring the wagon." Tyler tipped his hat. "Dress warm, gets chilly as the sun goes down." At the appointed time, Tyler arrived with his wagon, and Olivia was surprised to see a picnic basket and blankets in the back. "Where are we going?" she asked as he helped her up to the seat. "Not far, just out to my place." He clicked to the horses. "Thought you might like to see it, since I've been talking about it so much." The prospect of visiting Tyler's ranch sent a flutter of anticipation through Olivia. It felt like a significant step, an invitation into his private world. They traveled west from town, following the creek through gently rolling hills dotted with cottonwood trees displaying their autumn gold. After about 4 miles, Tyler guided the wagon up a long drive toward a 2-story house nestled among trees. Olivia's first impression was of solid craftsmanship and careful attention to detail. The house wasn't grand, but it was well proportioned, with a wide porch across the front and large windows to capture the light. A barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings and corrals. "Tyler, it's lovely," she said sincerely. His expression was a mixture of pride and uncertainty. "Built most of it myself with help from neighbors for the raising." He brought the wagon to a stop before the porch. "Come inside." The interior was simple but comfortable, a large main room with a stone fireplace, dining area, and kitchen at the back. A staircase led to the upper floor. Masculine touches predominated practical furniture, minimal decoration, but there were surprising elements of refinement. Well-filled bookshelves, a decent rug before the hearth, even a small writing desk by the window. "It's not fancy," Tyler said, watching her reactions closely, "but it's solid. Warm in winter, cool in summer." "You've created a real home here," Olivia told him, running her hand along the smooth wood of the dining table. "It suits you." Relief crossed his features. "Thought we might have our picnic on the hill behind the house, best view of the sunset from there." The hill was a gentle rise about 100 yards from the house, crowned with a massive old cottonwood tree. From its crest, the view extended for miles, rolling pastureland, the creek winding through it, distant mountains on the horizon. Tyler spread a blanket beneath the tree and arranged their picnic: cold chicken, bread, cheese, apples, and a bottle of wine. "This is wonderful," Olivia said, settling on the blanket. "Thank you for bringing me here, been wanting to for a while." Tyler poured wine into 2 tin cups. "Wanted you to see where I live, who I am when I'm not in town." The simple honesty of the statement touched her. As they ate and talked, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, Olivia felt a deepening connection to this man and the life he'd built. When he pointed out the boundaries of his property, including the new section purchased at auction, she could hear the pride and attachment in his voice. "Land gets in your blood out here," he explained, "becomes part of who you are." "I think I'm beginning to understand that," Olivia replied, watching the sunset paint the landscape in brilliant oranges and purples. "There's something about this openness that changes your perspective." Tyler nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Been thinking about that change in perspective." He set his cup down and turned to face her fully. "Olivia, I need to say something, and I'd appreciate you hearing me out before responding." The seriousness in his tone made her heart quicken. "Of course. When Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part with companionship, family, sharing dreams." He looked out over his land, then back to her. Been living half a life these past years, getting by but not really living. His eyes held hers. Until you stepped off that train. Olivia felt her breath catch. Tyler. I know it hasn't been long, he continued. And I'm not asking for answers today, but I want you to know that I've fallen in love with you, Olivia Vaughan. Your strength, your grace, your willingness to adapt to circumstances most women would have run from. The declaration, so honestly given, brought tears to Olivia's eyes. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. He reached for her hand. Just know that if you decide to stay in Cottonwood Springs, there's a place for you here, not just in the town, but in my life, if you want it. When you're ready. The tears spilled over then, tracking down Olivia's cheeks. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself, she whispered. But I've fallen in love with you too, Tyler, with your kindness, your integrity, your quiet strength. Joy transformed his face. Olivia. I came west looking for security, for a practical arrangement. She squeezed his hand. I never expected to find love, never thought I'd feel this way again, or perhaps at all. Tyler moved closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. May I kiss you, Olivia? Yes, she breathed. His lips met hers with exquisite gentleness at first, then with growing passion as she responded. It was a kiss that spoke of longing fulfilled, of possibility becoming reality, of a future opening before them. When they finally parted, Olivia felt changed somehow, as if the last pieces of her old self had fallen away, making room for who she was becoming in this new place, with this man. They sat together beneath the cottonwood tree as twilight deepened into night, talking of practical matters and dreams alike, her teaching position, his plans for the ranch, how they might build a life together. No formal proposal was made that evening, both agreeing that such a step could wait until they'd had more time together, until Olivia was fully settled in her new life. As they drove back to town under a blanket of stars, Olivia felt a sense of peace and rightness she hadn't experienced in years. The unexpected turn her life had taken, from abandoned bride to woman in love, from Eastern teacher to Western pioneer, seemed now like a blessing rather than a misfortune. Tyler, she said softly as the lights of Cottonwood Springs appeared in the distance. Do you remember what you said to me that first day at the station? He glanced at her, the moonlight silvering his profile. That Harold wouldn't be coming. No, after that, you said you've been waiting for me. She smiled at the memory. I thought it was just a turn of phrase at the time. Understanding dawned in his eyes. And now I think perhaps it was true in a way neither of us could have known then. She leaned against his shoulder. Perhaps I had been waiting for you all along. Tyler's arm circled her shoulders, drawing her closer as the wagon rolled steadily toward town. And I for you, Olivia, and I for you. In the months that followed, Olivia's life transformed completely. She began teaching alongside Miss Perkins, bringing literature and music to the children of Cottonwood Springs. The settlement from Harold Winfield's estate allowed her to purchase a small piano for the schoolhouse and establish a lending library in one corner of the classroom. Her friendship with Claire deepened as she helped with baby William, often spending Sunday afternoons at the Mills home, playing the piano while the infant slept peacefully in his mother's arms. Mrs. Johnson became like family, offering wisdom and motherly advice as Olivia navigated her new life and budding relationship. Tyler courted her properly, with regular visits to town, Sunday dinners, and occasional picnics at his ranch when weather permitted. They attended church together, joined community events, and slowly built a shared life between her teaching and his ranching. In December, during the Christmas pageant that Olivia had helped organize, Tyler proposed formally, presenting her with his mother's ring, a simple gold band with a small pearl. Their wedding was set for April, when spring would return to the land and new beginnings seemed most fitting. The ceremony, held in the town church with flowers brought all the way from Denver, united not just two people but two lives, two histories, two sets of dreams. Judge Patterson performed the service, with Sheriff Mills standing as best man and Claire as matron of honor. Baby William slept through the proceedings, waking only to add his voice to the congratulations at the precise moment the judge pronounced them husband and wife. "Perfect timing," Tyler whispered to Olivia as they turned to face their community as Mr. and Mrs. Northcott. "A new generation approving our union." The town hall reception that followed was filled with music, dancing, and the warm wishes of a community that had embraced Olivia completely. As twilight fell, Tyler led his bride to their waiting wagon, decorated with ribbons and flowers by the schoolchildren. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Northcott?" he asked, helping her up to the seat home. The word held such meaning now, not a place she'd left behind, but a place she'd found, a future she'd chosen, a love that had found her when she least expected it. "Yes," Olivia replied, her heart full. "I'm ready." As they drove away from town toward their ranch, their home, Olivia thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this moment. Abandoned at a train station, facing an uncertain future, she had found not just security but love, not just a place to stay but a place to belong. "Happy?" Tyler asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Olivia smiled, leaning against his shoulder as the stars began to appear in the vast western sky. "More than I ever thought possible." And as their wagon rolled steadily toward home, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with unexpected detours. And the most precious destinations are the ones we never plan to find. 5 years later, on a warm June evening, Olivia sat on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching Tyler play with their children on the front lawn. 4-year-old Sarah, named for Tyler's first wife in a gesture of love and remembrance, chased her father with squeals of delight while 2-year-old James toddled after them, determined to keep up. The ranch had prospered under their joint care. Tyler's practical knowledge, combined with Olivia's organizational skills, creating a successful operation that now employed 3 full-time hands. The house had grown too, with a new wing adding bedrooms for the children and the long-awaited music room where Olivia's piano took pride of place. She still taught at the school 3 days a week, sharing duties with Miss Perkins, who was grateful for the reduced schedule as she advanced in years. On weekends, Olivia gave piano lessons to a dozen children from town and neighboring ranches, filling their home with music and laughter. Claire and Sheriff Mills remained close friends, their son William now a sturdy 5-year-old who was best friends with Sarah. They had added a daughter to their family 2 years earlier, completing their happiness. Life wasn't always easy. Drought had threatened their cattle 1 year, and a severe winter storm another, but the community banded together during difficult times, just as Tyler had described to her that first day. Neighbors helping neighbors, building something lasting in this challenging but beautiful land. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Tyler scooped up both children and carried them, giggling, to the porch. "Think these little ranch hands are ready for supper and bed," he announced, setting them down beside Olivia. "Mama, Papa showed us the new foal," Sarah reported excitedly. "She has a white star on her face, and we're going to name her Star," James added, climbing into Olivia's lap. "That sounds perfect," Olivia agreed, smoothing her son's hair. Later, after the children were bathed and tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Olivia joined Tyler on the porch swing, leaning against him as they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Was thinking about that day at the train station," Tyler said, his arm around her shoulders. "How close I came to not riding into town that afternoon." Olivia looked up at him. "Why did you never really explained." "Had a feeling." He shrugged slightly. "Something told me I needed to be there. Couldn't explain it then, can't really explain it now." "Divine providence, perhaps," Olivia suggested, "or just extraordinarily good timing. Either way, I'm grateful." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Every day I'm grateful." As they swayed gently in the gathering darkness, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment of perfect contentment. From a lonely, uncertain woman abandoned at a train station to a beloved wife, mother, teacher, and integral part of a community, the transformation still amazed her. "I love you, Tyler Northcott," she said softly. Thank you for saying those words to me that day. You've been waiting for me. You changed my life with that simple kindness. And you changed mine by accepting it, he replied, pulling her closer. By taking a chance on a quiet cowboy and a life you never planned for. Together they watched the moon rise over their land, their home, the future they'd built from unexpected beginnings. And in the peaceful silence of the western night, surrounded by the fruits of their love and labor, Olivia knew that some journeys, though unplanned, lead exactly where our hearts need to go.